My topic for today, I'm calling it Compassion, a Contagion Worth Spreading. So we're going to do a little bit of a review. This is so crazy. I went through this PowerPoint and fixed everything, and now it's not fixed at all. But anyway, to go back and just kind of review a little bit, you know, we are all, I think, having some bit of fear. I have said before, I think fear is going to be a constant companion, and I guess I will speak for myself with that. And you know, you're coasting along and things are going well for a little bit, and then you get a little scratchy throat, or you see a little news or something, and the fear rears its ugly head again. And so been talking about how to manage that fear, how to handle it so that we can continue living our lives and not be immersed in it. So remember that fear is a messenger. Fear is here to share information with you, and fear is really to get you moving into action so that you can survive. That's the bottom line of what fear is about. So they're seeing me, but not this. Okay. Oh, I don't know what in the heck is going on here. Y'all are seeing me. You want to see me the whole time. And I created this beautiful PowerPoint for you all to see. So something is wacky with our share screen. Share screen. There we go. We're almost there. Share. Yay! All right, I can see you, I can see the screen. I don't know if you're seeing me or the screen, but this is a little better because now I can see you and the PowerPoint, so I know what the heck I'm talking about. What's next? Awesome. All right, so back to what I was saying. Fear is a messenger. Its number one message is to take care of you so that you survive. Beyond that, it's not particularly helpful. You know, once you get yourself to the place where you're safe, you don't want to stay in that fear mode. Okay, you want to be able to dissipate. So that's what I've been talking about the past couple of weeks. So recognizing and acknowledging the fear for what it is. We talked about diving into the thing that you're afraid of. You know, find out as much as you can about it. Like, you know, educate yourself about this virus. Be informed. Don't be dumb. You know, don't be gathering in public places and things. Just be informed. The next thing that's really super important is to put fear in its proper place. And what do I mean by that? Putting fear in its proper place. Do not let fear be in the driver's seat of your life. Fear needs to be either behind you, or if you really want to be informed by it, let it ride shotgun, but don't ever let fear have the driver's seat and make your decisions and your choices for you. Put it in its proper place. The next thing too, that's really important as far as dissipating that fear is to be able to have your positive social connections, your places where you can go to where you feel safe, where someone can hold you, where someone can let you get whatever it is that you need to get out of your system and just come back to center. Those social connections are vital, absolutely vital during this time. We may be distancing physically, but that doesn't mean that we isolate ourselves. And then the advice, which is the same for really everything, is to practice mindfulness. In other words, being in the moment, being in the present. You know, I don't know about you, but my feelings, everything is like right up here, right on the surface. I can go from anger to sadness to fear to joy and gratitude. It feels like I'm always on the edge of tears very often. And what I have to keep doing is just bringing myself back to the moment. You know, I heard some news the other day that put me in a tailspin. And I let the feelings wash over me. I let myself feel it. And then realize, well, you know what? I'm sitting in my home in Ocala, Florida. I have my husband here next to me, my loved ones. I am safe. I am well. In this moment, I have everything I need. and keep bringing myself back to the present moment. And that's what we need to keep doing. You know, don't deny the feelings and the things that are going through you, but don't get stuck. Don't get stuck. And remember to bring yourself back to the present moment and have gratitude for what is in this moment, without worrying about what's going to come tomorrow or you know, in weeks from now or whatever. Just be present. So fear is a messenger. For those times when you do get in that, you know, where you get in that really high anxiety mode, which happens, you know, this was a technique that one of my peers shared, one of the ministers, for grounding. And it's probably something, if anyone has been to therapy or for anxiety, I think it's one of those kind of techniques. And the idea is pick 5 things that you can see in the room. It's like to bring yourself to the present moment. Look around and remember where you are. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel. You feel the seat under you? Do you feel the wind blowing? Whatever it is, you know, that you happen to be feeling, the clothing on your body. 3 things that you can hear. 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, something you can taste. All of those things, what that does is bring you back to the moment, to the present. And that's the idea, grounding you in this moment where everything is okay. So that's a grounding technique that that I think is helpful, along with just breathing, just taking a nice deep breath. So another thing that I want you all, this is again part of our review. We talked about what happens when we get into that mode of fear and people go into this fight, flight, or freeze mode. And when we're seeing, you know, when people go into fight mode, and I like the little graphic there showing the, you know, the lion and or whatever he is, the tiger and the caveman, because that's what our biologically, physiologically, that's what we're set up for. We're still very much the same, that when something scares us, we go into that fight, flight, or freeze mode. Even though we don't have tigers running after us or lions, what we have today is coronavirus. It's a little scary coming after us. But fight, flight, and freeze doesn't necessarily, like fight doesn't have to look like a fist. It can look like aggression. It can look like arguing. It can look like just kind of nastiness. So if you happen to be in the grocery store and the clerk is snippy or a little bit nasty, it may be that that person is just really scared, and that's how the fear comes out, you know, or else maybe you're seeing it online, you know, of people being very aggressive and being hurtful and kind of nasty in the posts that they're making on Facebook. That's all just a manifestation of the fear that we're feeling, right? It shows up in different ways. So you may see withdrawal and avoidance, people hiding. That's a manifestation of being in flight. For some, it's numbness and just that inability to take action, to do anything. These are just different manifestations of that fear that we have going into fight, flight, or freeze mode. So that brings us to this, where we are right now, you know, this idea, we are indeed in a crisis. And I think it was John F. Kennedy that first said this quote about the Chinese using 2 different brushstrokes for the word for crisis. And what crisis means, those 2 characters that they use to describe crisis, means danger and opportunity at the same time. And that's where we are right now. It's a moment of danger, yes, but it's also a moment of opportunity. And we know that there have been many things that haven't been working in our society for a long time. So this is an opportunity for us to make some changes that have probably been needing changing for a while. And also this idea that crisis doesn't test our character necessarily, it reveals it. It reveals it. So I'm going to talk about that. There is a story, I don't know how many of you have heard this before, it's probably review for most of you, but The story of the Cherokee elder who was teaching his grandson about life. And he told the child, there are two wolves inside of us which are always at war with one another. One wolf represents fear, anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, hatred, and lies. The other stands for its opposite, for joy, peace, love, hope, kindness, friendship, generosity, faith, and truth. The grandson thought about it for a moment and asked grandfather, which wolf wins? Of course, the elder replied, the one that you feed. There are folks feeding a lot of fears here lately. It's part of that crisis. And I guess I was moved to talk about this topic because some of the things that I've been seeing, and some of the things real honestly that I've been feeling myself, some comments on Facebook and just lots of things that are being thrown around. And what I'm going to share with you is a quote from Brene Brown that talks about the dangers of doing that and feeding our fears. And the biggest thing is the dehumanization. You know, looking at other people not as people but as objects. So it becomes you versus it. So dehumanization is the process by which we become accepting of violations against human nature, the human spirit, and for many of us, violations against the central tenets of our faith. There is a line. It's etched with dignity. We must never tolerate dehumanization, the primary instrument of violence that has been used in every genocide recorded throughout history, which makes atrocities like slavery, torture, and human trafficking possible. When we engage in dehumanizing rhetoric or promote dehumanizing images, we diminish our own humanity in the process. Guess what made me think about this quote was comments I saw on Facebook about there was a ship that was off the coast of Florida and wanting to dock, and of course there was lots of fear around allowing those folks entry, and some of the comments that were made about that were just really so hurtful, you know, to hear other human beings being referred to as like cockroaches or vermin or something like that, you know, and I know in my heart that comes from a place of fear that people, when they're in their right thinking, you know, probably would not refer to people that way. And that's just one of many, you know, as we get into the political realm, you know, anytime there's anything political on there, the horrible things that we are saying about people who are on the other side. This is an opportunity for us to check ourselves. And so that's why this topic feels so important to me. Comes down to disrespect, I personally have taken a stand now, and I post things that maybe some ministers or some people would call political. I stand on the edge a little bit. For me, I only post what I feel like is informational or things that have to do with human rights kinds of things. And because of some of the things I've seen, I'm checking myself. Let me put it that way. I want to make sure that whatever I put on Facebook or whatever people are replying is done with respect, because this is the truth. Disrespect is central to the ideology of violence. And this comes from a gentleman named a physician, James Gilman, who has studied violence and talking about violence as another epidemic, a national epidemic. I have yet to see a serious act of violence that was not provoked by the experience of feeling shamed, humiliated, disrespected, or ridiculed. There's a statistic, I don't remember exactly what it is, but it was something like 70 or 80% of people who are in prison in some way or another, their imprisonment goes back to somehow feeling shamed, humiliated, or disrespected. You know, that is what is at the bottom of many people being incarcerated. You know, when you think about people fighting in a parking lot because somebody bumped them in the grocery store, or, you know, things that really just spin us out of control, that has to do with feeling respected. We may not expect to love everyone or that everyone is going to love us, but we all expect to be respected. So respect. If you all have attended the center, or, you know, have been with us for a while, you know, I did a series on a book called The Art of Waging Peace by Paul Chappell. And he calls respect the first line of defense. He said, I call respect the infinite shield because it not only protects us, but everyone around us. It prevents dangerous situations from escalating and serves as the first line of defense against violence. Respect is the foundation for every genuine act of love, compassion, and kindness. So while you may not feel necessarily love, maybe you have to work your way to feeling compassion for someone, we can always respect other people and allow them to think the way it is that they think. We may not agree with them, but we can always respect one another. Let me go back. Escape. I actually want to share a little story about that. Right. On this slide. On the current slide. So my little lesson with this, I had posted something on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and it had to do with the good doctor, Dr. Fauci, had kind of disappeared from the scene for a little bit. He wasn't seen publicly, and I was very concerned about that. There was a fear for me that his voice was not going to be heard. So I posted an article, and a couple of people that I hadn't seen in probably 40 years. You know how you connect with people from elementary and middle school. And there were two gentlemen that I was friends with in middle school that commented on the article and said basically that it wasn't true. You know, so I went and looked it up. It said that Dr. Fauci had refuted that everything was fine. And so I went and you know, to corroborate it. And basically the doctor said that it was not helpful for people to be posting things about division, and I could see the wisdom of that. That made sense to me, that it was probably, while not entirely untrue, it was not cool for me to post that. So I took the article down, and I found one that actually spoke more to what I wanted to say, which was, we need to listen to the people who are the experts in the field. Just be careful where you're getting your information from. Again, be informed. And so I posted that article, and it opened up a line of conversation and dialogue with these other two gentlemen. And it was really, it was very respectful, it was very informative, and I was just really impressed with how they presented themselves. So on the back end, I messaged one of the gentlemen, and I just thanked him. You know, I thanked them both, number one, for calling me out, because I don't ever want to put misinformation out there. So that was the first thing I did publicly. But then privately, I thanked one of them and just said how much I appreciated him for being so respectful and for speaking his truth in a way that others could hear. And he thanked me for reaching out to him. And then he shared something to the effect of, you know, we probably have a lot more in common than we have different. And then he went on to share about a family story of his, that his grandfather was raising 8 kids during the Depression. And when he lost his job and his way to take care of his family, the stress was so much that he ended up in a mental institution and was unable to take care of his family. And so I could then understand, because I heard this story, I could connect on a human level with him and have compassion for why he was feeling the way he was feeling. Completely shifted my perspective. And even my personal mission statement out of that one conversation, that one chat with this gentleman, that was so respectful and just created a moment of compassion. You know, so my new mission statement is to use my voice to help others find theirs, but also to use my voice to speak truth to bullshit, but do it in a way that is fiercely compassionate for everyone that's involved. And so I'm very careful now what I put on Facebook. I'm very careful about the comments that I allow on there. I'm not going to have people on my page disrespecting other people or talking about the extermination of one political party or another. We need to get beyond that, and we need to find the places of commonality. So this is where the compassion comes in. What is that? What is compassion? Literally, compassion means to suffer together. Calm with passion, to suffer with someone else. Among researchers in the social emotional realm, it is defined as that feeling that arises when we're confronted with another person's suffering, and feel motivated to relieve that suffering, right? Compassion actually has a biological basis, which is leading researchers to say that it has an evolutionary purpose. You know, we were duped. We were duped with the story of Darwin and talking about survival of the fittest. That's not what Darwin actually said in his not his manifesto, but in his work. It was really compassion. Compassion is the thing that helps us to survive as a species, because we need one another. So benefits of compassion, just so you know, it's not some airy fairy feel good kind of thing. That compassion actually increases our longevity. People who are compassionate are physiologically healthier. There's less inflammation in your system when you are a person who is compassionate. It buffers us against stress. In other words, it can help you when things get difficult, when you're in that crisis. That being a person of compassion and having compassion for others can help you alleviate that stress. It actually helps with mental health. People who have compassion for others experience less anxiety and depression. Probably and most likely because they are out of their own heads and they're starting to look out at the world around them and other people. Many of you know that I have volunteered in the prison now for 5 years, and I teach this stuff. I teach about empathy and social emotional learning and compassion and all of these things. And it's a magical moment when people get it. When those guys realize that they are not the only ones that are suffering. It seems like it would be obvious, right? Here you've got, 2,000 people that are locked up together, that are in a very dark place, spiritually dark, a very sad place, and they're all suffering in their own ways, but so many of them are so much into their own heads and their own suffering that they don't even realize what's going on around them. And it's like magic the moment they realize that and they get it. It shifts everything. Just like it shifted for me in that moment of hearing somebody else's story and getting the background of why they believe the way they believe. It allows for compassion and it changes everything. So compassionate people have greater life satisfaction. They're living in hope. And then this last one here about elevation and positive contagion. I shared this in my TED Talk on kindness. That feeling that you get when you see someone do something really beautiful for another person. Or, when hearing about our folks on the front lines and Donna and Norma doing all this, incredible, heroic stuff that is really just part of their day-to-day existence and who they are, that it elevates you. You get this feeling of, expansion in your heart. You get this warm, fuzzy thing. The warm fuzzies, that good feeling that you're getting is because different hormones are being secreted in your system. It's the oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which is very healing for us. So you don't even have to be the beneficiary of the compassion. You don't have to be the one doing it. You just witness it, and it elevates. It elevates us. And it creates a positive contagion, right? So people see that, just like kindness. When you see an act of kindness, you're more likely to do an act of kindness yourself. It's the same with compassion. It creates a positive kind of contagion. You know, our feelings, our emotions are contagious to other people. So we want to be careful what we put out there. You know, I'm challenging each one of us in our spiritual community, because that's what we're about, is spiritual growth and practice and love, right? And creating a world that works for everyone, that we create this positive contagion of kindness and compassion, especially where we feel like it's lacking. It doesn't mean it's for somebody, and maybe it is for somebody else to do, but you don't, that's not your business. You don't have any control over that. All you have control over is you. All I have control over is me. So if I'm looking at the world and going, my gosh, it's so just hateful, mean, well, you know, time to hold up that mirror and say, how can I have more compassion for people that are hurting, for people that maybe I don't agree with? That's my call to action for you all, for all of us, not you. I include myself in that as well. So, you know, to cultivate that compassion, I don't know, I feel like with our little group here, maybe I'm preaching to the choir, but maybe we can all grow a little bit. How do we cultivate that sense of compassion for others? First of all, we look for our shared human experience, right? We're all human beings. So if there's somebody, you know, you don't agree with, maybe find out what their perspective is and see where you can connect with that person as just human being to human being, and remembering that we're all going through it right now, right? Everybody is a little bit on edge. See people as individuals. Put a face on the suffering, right? When you can, we see these humongous numbers, you know, of people that are being affected by this, but you know, when you realize it's your neighbor, or it's your best friend's parent, or you know, it puts a face on it, it changes how you look at it. So put a face on the suffering. Remember that all of those numbers that we see are actually individual people. You know, when we put people in boxes, we dehumanize them. Remember, each one of those people is an individual. We want to promote cooperation amongst one another. It's not about competition. You know, we saw at the beginning of this crisis, as it was unfolding, all of these people like, let me grab as much toilet paper as I can, you know, like I'm going to win some kind of prize. You know, it's not about getting more than anybody. It's not about being the best. Right now, we need to be cooperating with one another. And, you know, if we have hoarded the mask, the toilet paper, what happens when the neighbor gets sick? Right? What happens when somebody else in the community gets sick and now does not have what they need to stay safe and keep from spreading illness? We have got to learn how to cooperate more rather than compete. The next thing is seeking to understand each other rather than looking for ways to blame people or judge somebody else. It's, again, look for their stories, get curious, find out why people think the way they do, and not look for reasons to blame other people or to judge them. The next one, practicing mindfulness. Again, it keeps coming back to mindfulness, doesn't it? And presence. It's being here in this moment. When people get into that fight, flight, or freeze mode, you know, we forget about mindfulness. And remember the hand model of the brain, right? You've got that, your brain stem here, you've got your midbrain, which is your fight, flight, or freeze, and then you've got your cortex, which is the thinking part of your brain. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, you know, we have a whole like TV show series about people who have snapped. And Their fight, flight, or freeze mode takes the seat, takes the driver's seat. The thinking part is no longer online, and people can do some unspeakable things that they would never do when they were in their right mind. So you want to keep yourself from going into that mode, realize when other people have snapped, but also doing the things that bring you back down, like calm yourself. Because once you snap, once you go into that full-fledged fear mode, it can take, depending on how bad this is, it can take you up to a half day to come back down from a good blow up. So we want to avoid getting there in the first place. And that's again why our connections are so important, because it will help you bring this thing and calm yourself. So practice mindfulness, calm your inner worrier, especially before you hit send. And then also to cultivate compassion is savor the good feeling that comes when you do something good for somebody else. You know how good it feels when you've done something kind for another person, or you've reached out, you realize that you have made their day a little brighter, you've lightened their burden somehow, and it feels good. You know, so sit in that for a while, like feel that, acknowledge that, and you'll find that you want to recreate that experience for yourself and for them. So that's how we cultivate compassion. I love this quote from the Dalai Lama. He says that love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. Compassion is the radicalism of our time. I'm all about being a compassionate radical. You know, I don't know about you all, but I encourage you and I challenge you to step up for this and to be respectful and to be compassionate, knowing that we're all going through it. And as we help one another, as we light the path for other people around us, we light it for ourselves as well. And so that takes me to our the affirmation. I take responsibility for my words and my actions, consciously spreading. That's consciously spreading on purpose, compassion and kindness. Let's start a new contagion. All right, stop share. So we're back, and I don't know where I am time-wise. But I am going to, let me see what chats we have going here. Donna, you're a rock star. She heard that. We know she is missed. They are missed, Donna and Norma. Shanda, we all need to start working together. Stop pointing fingers for who's at fault, who did or didn't do that, and come together. Yeah. Does anyone want to say anything? Like raise your hand. Those are, I can see some of you. Hi, Nira. I'm gonna call on you. Hey, girl.
Hi, how are you?
Spot, I'm good. You have anything you want to add? My fellow peace builder, I called on Nira because Nira is the executive director of Circle Up Center for Practical Peace Building, my other side gig. And we've talked about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I loved how you integrated the idea of fear, how that drives a lot of our ability to dehumanize groups. We're coming from a place of fear, so we label people, and then that justifies our aggression towards them. And that we need to bring it back to seeing the humanity in each other, and working on exercising our compassion muscle. So like anything If you don't exercise it, it's going to get weak. And it may be hard in the beginning to find a way to be compassionate to certain groups, especially if they have ideologies very different from ours. But those are the groups that we need to work hardest on, because they are human beings and they have very similar feelings and needs to us. They're just expressing them from their worldview and their lenses. So if we can try really hard in the beginning to work that compassion muscle for those groups that are very different from us, we can get better at it over time.
Yeah, thank you. That you reminded me of something else, and that's the idea that that compassion is really part of our hardwiring. You know, if you look at and my little grandsons, you know, 2 and 3 years old, you can just see when they see someone hurting, you know, they want to reach out, they want to do something. You see the concern, you know, you see it all over them. Even babies in a nursery, they're brand spanking new. One baby starts crying, what happens next? They're all crying. They're all crying. It's just that natural thing, and it's part of our it's actually biological. There's something in our brains called mirror neurons that have us connect with and feel and mirror what is happening, you know, in other people. So it's part of our, it's part of our physiology. I've been feeling, Natasha, I've been feeling the call to do something to help the most vulnerable, driving, grocery delivery, doing something. Yeah, awesome. I want to ask, what kinds of things are you all doing to get out of your own head and your own stuff? Is anyone like reaching out to their neighbors, or maybe making phone calls to folks, checking in on people? I've heard some really great stories. I know there was, go ahead, Mary
Lou. One of the things that I've been doing this week is, I think I told the story maybe last week, where my daughter owns a hair salon. She just bought out her partner about a month and a half ago. The state ordered her to close down. She has 12 employees with little kids that need to be fed, and she's feeling tremendous fear, and she's feeling responsible. And I have been just staying in contact with her all week, trying to give her encouragement and some of the lessons that I learned at CSL. And by the end of the conversation, she starts out crying. By the end of the conversation, she's at least not crying, smiling. And yesterday, she said to me, "I'm just doing the best I can." And I said, "And that's all you can do. And then you just have to leave it up to God and to the universe to bring what you need to you." And so that's pretty much what I've been doing this week, plus checking on my other neighbor who has MS, can't get out. But then I heard that if you're over 65, you shouldn't be going to the grocery store at all anyway. So I've started using the delivery system, but every once in a while there's something that we have to go out and get. But I'm just looking for opportunities to help somebody else.
Great, thank you. I see Vivian wrote here, running a widow support group, going on Facebook Live, helping them see a face since they're all alone in their homes. Oh, thank you. Beautiful. You know, maybe go through your phone. I did this the other day and just went down the list. I'm like, who do I need to check in with? You know, is there someone that I just, you know, maybe whoever I feel led to kind of brighten their day or something, would just check in. Yeah, Nira. Oh, sorry.
Vivian, can you share your widow support group with us in the chat box? I have a friend of mine who just lost her husband who might be interested in joining it. I don't know what the requirements or the context of it. Is it open to other people?
Yes.
Yeah, if you go ahead and type it in, that would be great for people to get in touch. All right. Hey, Norma, can you talk, or is Donna sleeping? Got it. Okay. All right. Well, I think, yeah, I don't know what happened, techie here, but I guess that's probably it for this portion, unless anyone has anything else burning they want to say or share.